All right, thanks for joining us again. We begin this conversation this morning on the need to reorientate our youths and curb, cybercrime. Of course, you've been following the news as well concerning all the, funny things that we've been hearing about Nigerians all over the place. But even at home, a number of people are asking a lot of questions. So this morning we have with us to join us in discussing this interesting issue, a former member, House of Representatives in Lagos, Honorable Dayo Shalebi-Oshu. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so it's a matter of concern definitely to you as well. The fact that, there's this news all over the place about Nigerians and in various parts of the world. How does this, what do you think we can do? First of all, what's responsible for all of this in your opinion?
We've heard a lot of things. The easiest thing, the quickest thing to do is to put it on the table of the government. But that's really not what the situation is. That's not what the cause is. When we look at, I had a discussion with somebody a couple of days ago, or I think it was on Friday when it started to trend. And the first thing he said is, politicians, bad governance, and this. And I made it clear to him that to build a nation, to have a nation, you need good governance and a fantastic society. The equation of both, or the addition of both, makes up what you call a fantastic nation. Out of society comes government, and you discover that initially, he had talked about, people are leaving the country because of hardship and all. And the question I asked him, the first thing I said was, listen, from when God made earth, migration was a part of human beings. And when people complain about lack of infrastructure and opportunities, you leave the shores of Nigeria, you go abroad where you get the opportunity. If you take, for example, in the UK, in the United Kingdom, the last time I checked, if I remember clearly, I think we had about between 14 and 17 Nigerians in the parliament there. Some Nigerians are mayors in the UK, in America, councilmen and things like that. But this is a case of making decisions. You take decisions on, this is what I want to do, or that's what I want to do.
So if I can just quickly butt in, you said earlier that, the quickest thing to do would be to put it at the foot of government as, being something that government is responsible for, isn't it?
Like I said, it takes governance, a good government, society, to come up with the same nation.
Yes, but do we have the kind of good governance that can encourage anyone to remain in Nigeria?
We have a population of 200 million people. In the UK, you need to find out the amount of British who keep moving on a daily basis to Australia. There are different reasons why people move, why people migrate.
But to a large extent, that in our part of the world, it's largely economic opportunities, infrastructure, things that people can point to, that look, things aren't working here. And this didn't just start. You remember that back in the 80s,
absolutely,
it was a brain drain, thing that everyone just wanted opportunities to practice what they learned. It's still the same thing now. So it's something that should give people concern.
You remember then we had, I think it was the Nigerian Orientation Agency, if I'm right, who's been saddled with the responsibility of tuning the mindset of Nigerians. However, when you see what's still being put out there, I don't think the technique matches the time, For example, you see some adverts. I remember our regular adverts keep shouting at us. I don't see him. I don't see him. Go see this movie. And I'm thinking, we're not a mad people. We can listen. We need to. And when you hear that on a daily basis, you begin to doubt your humanity. Now, this also, the quality of life you live is not based on money alone. You want to be able to take a walk in peace. You want to be able to do certain things when and how you choose to. However, we need to understand that choice and freedom are two great gifts of life. But where unchecked freedom impacts choice, danger looms.
Now, briefly, I'd like us to look at how much this has eaten deep into the society, because I think on one hand, there's that, government, the responsibility of government. There's also the morals of the society. I was going through the newspapers this morning and I saw reports about, some of these suspects spraying money at parties, some of them being friends with politicians in high places. So apparently this is something a lot of people know. We perhaps know about these things. We can even point, okay, that's where he stays, and we know that this is what he does, perhaps. And so I think that also we should look at the society. So does it say a lot about our morals, our values as a country, for example?
Absolutely. Perhaps shouldn't even be a word in there to be used. It's certain. We all know you know everybody around your area. I remember there was an IG who had said in the past that he had prosecuted some members of parliament. Then they were voted for, they were sent there. Yes, there are cases where people with a bad past actually create a fantastic future, yes. But that's where the person wants to do that. Now I will continue. The orientation agency has a lot to do.
Now, the question that I asked on my mind when I heard, when the thought comes to me that we need to orientate people, orientate to what?
There's so many things. We need to retune our minds. There's need for cultural reorientation. There's cultural reorientation. There's moral orientation. There's that need to be psyched as individuals. For example,
maybe I should put the question different, Mr. Division. What is the Nigerian identity that we should orientate the Nigerian youth towards?
These are things that have always been there. I remember growing up, for example, if somebody offered me money and I took the money with my mother there, without her signifying that it was okay, she would whoop you. You would probably pass out. She would wake you up and whoop you, not because she was a bad person. If I had the opportunity to choose over and over again, I'll continue to choose her. But we need to understand that you have what you call punishment, repercussion, and things like that. Now, if you stop and you ask, I don't want to single out particular officials, but just to ask for directions, to be pointed in the right direction. They tell you where you're going, and then there's that quick chip in to say anything for the boys, for giving you directions. And you think, oh my goodness, what's going on here? There's a lot to do, and I'll tell you how. I will continue to put it on the doorstep of the Nigerian Orientation Agency. There's a need to really look at the act and see how it can be changed, what can be added on, what can be taken out. There's need for the Nigerian Orientation Agency to work with MBC. For example, music is a very powerful tool, a very, very powerful tool. And in the wrong hands can cause a lot of damage. We've seen what Fela was able to do with it. We've seen what Bob Marley was able to do with music. We've seen what Orlando Owo was able to do with music, Hugh Masekela, and so many more. Now, when we have young musicians who glorify certain things or certain acts, what do you think happens? It becomes popular. It becomes a norm. The abnormal becomes normal. It becomes, well, when it's no new thing, it becomes a part of the day-to-day.
Now, if I may, now the case
Absolutely.
in discussion, the FBI made, put out 18 names, as it were. Seven of them are said to be Nigerians. And something struck me. The FBI said this is perhaps the most sophisticated operation they have seen. In fact, they were trying to say that these guys are brilliant at what they do. And it just speaks to, on one hand, we have brilliant minds in Nigeria. On one hand, of course, they're using it the wrong way. But let's take a look at the punitive measures. You talked about punishment. So we have the EFCC, for example. There's the cyber crimes unit of the Nigeria Police, Interpol. I mean, last week was, Interpol week, and some of these issues were raised. So is the government overwhelmed? Are we well equipped? Because there's orientation on one hand, but then there's punishment. We have to look at punishment on another. So are we really approaching the punishment angle the right way?
Consequences and repercussion is what is a part of society. I cited an example of my mom being disciplined by my mom, it wasn't because she didn't love me. It was because it was what was necessary. Now, in this case, yes, I used to chair the EFCC. Yes, I was aware of a lot of things that went on then. Yes, I didn't agree with trying people before the press, before the world, even before getting to court. But usually, once it kicks off, you don't hear anything about it any longer. But where they're able to continue to show this is what has happened to this person, this is what has happened to that person, this is what has happened to that person, then people learn from it. But if you think I can do it and get away with it, it comes to now looking and thinking, okay, is crime part of the DNA of man? The answer is no. The answer is absolutely not. Nice. But when you're able to get away with crime, you send a message to the next person.
It's the same message that many people perhaps are observing now, that look, a number of people have gotten away with it, are still getting away with it, and perhaps being celebrated.
Absolutely.
Now, if that is what they see, naturally, the Nigerian youth would, tend to the same thing. That's on the one hand. You talked about your mom, as would many people who are in the legislature where you served before, you would now. And a significant number of Nigerians are pointing in that direction, that they also had moms like yours, had fathers like yours. If the youths continue to see, the kind of things and hear the kind of things that they hear about them, how then can we successfully orientate them?
There's a serious issue with mentoring in Nigeria. There's a serious issue with mentoring in Nigeria. When you look up, I hope I don't get into trouble for saying this, but it's best to just say it's the way I see it, the way I have observed it. We look up to religious houses, we look up to pastors, we look up to imams and so many more. It's not their job to mentor, if you know what I mean. That's a spiritual side of things. You look 9 out of 10 times, the first set of people you see are people in government. And the people you look up to, when they fall short, I mean, I've been on this program on a number of occasions, and I have said it the way I saw it, or I have seen it and continue to see it, that when a politician rises to power through violence, it shows. This is a typical case. A dog. You see dogs chase cars. And on an occasion, I thought, okay, that dog keeps chasing that car. What happens when it catches the car? Is it going to drive it? The answer is no. The same thing happens here when you have to kill, you have to maim to get into power. Getting there, we see the results.
Okay. Well, this is a very interesting conversation, but perhaps there is another dimension to it. Let's head to Maokwe. There's another angle to it. Maokwe.
Well, thank you, Ayo. We have with us this morning Vince Onyekwelu, who is a security consultant and a former British police officer. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily again.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm sure that this must have been very embarrassing for you. I'm sure you must have felt as embarrassed as many Nigerians felt with this revelation and with the investigation conducted by the FBI. They said this dates as far back as 2016.
Exactly.
And it's just beginning to come to fruition here in 2019. They have 80 people who are now defendants. They're still looking for about 56 around the world. And Nigeria says they're going to cooperate fully with the American authorities. This is a decision you support.
Oh, yes. I support the idea that Nigeria is willing, and they've been very loud about it. They're going to support the FBI in their investigations, further investigations. I think Nigeria that has a fantastic diplomatic ties with the USA, and I expect them to fight crime together, because when you do crime, you should do time if you're found guilty. Crime is crime. A life of crime is not what we should propagate in any way. It's negative, it's wrong. Young people should find more creative ways of making money, because those criminals have a network that goes across Africa, across Europe, across USA. It's not new to most of us. This idea of washing money, washing some dark piece of papers and it turns to money. It's been in Nigeria for a long time, but it seems it's been exported overseas where it's not common. And we should say that it is wrong. And I support the hard work the chairman of NIDCOM is doing about this, Honorable Abike Dabiri, obviously doing the best she can do about this. I support her. Even the EFCC standing up and say that we're going to fight this with the FBI. I give them kudos for that. The other side of it, we also need to ask ourselves questions about this issue of shame. Personally, I don't believe you have any reason to be ashamed of the criminalities of those young men. I don't have to be ashamed of what they've done. The shame is on them. It's on their name and on the names of their families. Because number one, they choose a life of crime. We did not choose a life of crime. I've seen top US fraudsters. Jeffrey Epstein, he was arrested, convicted, and obviously prosecuted and convicted. In Nigeria, you will not expect a Jeffrey Epstein to be arrested or prosecuted in Nigeria. He was a sex pervert. He was arrested, and the law took its course. In Nigeria, such a big man will not be arrested. However, to the Americans, they don't see Jeffrey Epstein's crime as a disgrace to their nation. Bernie Madoff, 2008, Ponzi mastermind. He was also arrested, prosecuted, and convicted. With the sort of billions he runs, the kind of Ponzi he ran. In Nigeria, he will be untouchable in Nigeria. But the US arrested him, prosecuted him, and convicted him. It's not a shame to the US government. Now,
no, but if we look at the fact that, yes, we know that the Nigerian government is working hard to try and, at least if there's anything we have seen the EFCC do, they have worked really hard in terms of trying to curb cybercrime. They have come down really hard on those who perpetrate cybercrime, which we popularly call here 419. And in some instances, they have received the support of Nigerians. In some other instances, it seems that we have mixed reactions to the behavior of this group of people. When these kinds of arrests are now, gotten abroad, when arrests are made of Nigerians, shame might not be the word, but it's certainly an embarrassment for the country, isn't it?
It is an embarrassment to the country. If you understand how to do brand positioning in business, you need to know that your brand is Nigeria. There are some bad negative news about Nigeria that comes up. You don't try to escalate it. You find a way to de-escalate it so it goes away with the current affairs. But if you keep banging on this issue as a shame to Nigeria, trust me, what's this gentleman called? Jeremy Cavalier, the Société Générale banker who defrauded and stole 7.5 billion US dollars, about 4.9 million euros. He's from France. It was never banged across. So we need to know how to do brand positioning in business. This kind of news, it's sad. Those arrested should have their days in court. If they're found guilty, prosecuted and convicted. But we shouldn't be able to flog it up right and center. It doesn't look good. Do you know what? If you're talking about bad news about Nigeria, can I give you 3 examples? The bad news is the killing of our best police officers by soldiers. The world is listening. America is here. They have their agents here. They heard about that news. They are following that news. That police officers were shot and killed by the army. That is bad media. Where is Mr. Mena? He's disappeared. That is bad media. Where is Mr. Yusuf Yakubu? That's bad media. Where is Babashir Lawal? That is bad media. So we've been having, what I'm saying, brand positioning. We should de-escalate this issue. Thank God they've been arrested in the USA. Hey, have we arrested any bandit or prosecuted any bandit in Nigeria for the past how many years? So we should learn to arrest.
When it's also a national problem, I also put the side of the EFCC, something that the EFCC is trying to combat. Yeah, these are the people who have come to the fore, in just for this particular news purpose. But we know that this year, the EFCC has arrested quite a substantial number of people, young people, who do nothing but, fraud. And it would seem that they're not being deterred. It would seem that it's like the more you arrest, the more people are getting into the business. How is it? How can we deter young people from looking this way of crime? How can we ensure that indeed when there's a clampdown, there is a total clampdown in such a way that people are discouraged from going into this sort of business?
You see, a life of crime needs to be discouraged. What causes crime in Nigeria? Unemployment is one of the major factors that causes crime. If we need to deter these young people from a life of crime, we should create opportunities for them for have something meaningful to do. All right? If you don't have meaningful things to do, unemployment. Now, when parents have painstakingly paid for their children to go to university, after graduation, there's what you call structural unemployment. When the structure of business has changed in the country, maybe from manual way of doing business to a more tech way of doing business, we understand that. But when you have issues of when employment is available, like top firms like CBN, NNPC, FIRS, you never hear that they are recruiting, but people are always going in there. But most of the Nigerians that don't have any connections, don't have a way of having employment. 65% of Nigerian youth, 65% are unemployed. 38% of Nigerians are unemployed. We don't even know our population. So if we have 200 million, that's about 80 million are unemployed.
But we're going to take a break at this moment. Yes, you have cited unemployment, but is it sufficient ground for people to go into a crime like this? No. In just a moment. Please stay with us.
Welcome back to Sunrise. Well, Honorable Dio Bush, Alebios is still here with us, but you know, this kind of matter, even though, you know, a lot has got to be done to ensure that the authorities do what they have to do, but the other component of all of this is because those who also suggested, they also need to check the identities of those people in terms of whether or not they've got dual citizenship. Does that matter? Does that play any role?
As far as I'm concerned, that for as long as they have ties to Nigeria, I don't think that matters. As far as I'm concerned, it's still looking for a way out of it. We need to appreciate the fact that this has happened. How do we find a solution to it? How do we make sure this does not continue to be an embarrassment? Corruption in general, not just them. They're the ones who have been caught. Does that mean it's still not happening? We know it's happening. We see a lot of people, whether politicians, citizenry, bankers, we see them live the kind of lifestyle that we understand does not match their earnings, but we choose to look the other way until it affects us directly. We need to understand that this is right and this is wrong. If we do not understand that or know that, we would continue to deal with this. I have always said, like I started with telling him that it's important that the Nigerian Orientation Agency comes at it with a completely different style. They need.
What should they be doing now?
Obviously, what they've been doing hasn't worked so far. The kind of campaign they've done hasn't worked so far. It requires a campaign. It's not just something you write a report on. This isn't something that Channels takes on or any other media house just takes on once and looks away. It has to be a campaign. It has to be a sustained campaign where certain things are highlighted. There's the need to involve psychologists who would understand how deep think and say what is the issue here. How do we solve it? We need to bring in brand managers consultants, private consultants, to look at how they can come up with something and make sure it works. I mentioned to you earlier on that there's need for the orientation agency to work with even television stations, radio stations. What quality of, what kind of materials are we putting out there? Because when you watch something or listen to something over and over and over again, it becomes a part of you. How can we work together and make sure that we're able to solve this? If it's not solved, and at this level, it didn't just start now. It's like, it started, it's like the Chinese bamboo tree, which takes 5 years to grow, but it doesn't break ground until after 5 years and grows 100 feet tall in 5 weeks. This has been there. You remember during the military, they had said that if you're caught doing any wrongdoing in a foreign land, if you serve 10 years there, when you get here, you come to serve another 10 years. I think eventually it was abolished, or but there is a strong need to do a serious case and also push out the need for mentoring out there.
All right, then, Honorable Dio Bush, Alebios, always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Mape.
To Lagos, he was talking about unemployment being one of the major drivers of this particular scheme, but some people say unemployment certainly cannot be the only reason. You must certainly have a criminal mindset for you to go into things like this.
Exactly. Unemployment is not the only reason, and unemployment shouldn't be the reason for you to go into a life of crime. Most of us did not come with silver spoons. We worked our ways up where we are today. Our population explosion can be also another challenge we are having. Once upon a time, China had an issue of population explosion. They had policies in place to manage it. In Nigeria, what is the policies to manage it? But I think going forward, we need to know that we need to find solutions. FBI been doing this for the past 2016, 3 years, investigating gradually, and now they've made arrests. It's working fine for them. In Nigeria, can we learn to have investigations in place before we arrest people? Secondly, we have to also appreciate that this issue shouldn't be a blanket criminal attack on Nigerian youth. Not that when they see somebody with a laptop or a tablet in Lagos, you're going to allow police officers or army officers to abuse our youth. We need to be very careful how we manage this, because a promising young man with a laptop behind his car can just be arrested for nothing. We need to not allow this to be a stereotype, whether it's for young people or for tribes in Nigeria. But all in all, we need to manage this branding perfectly. Right now, we can do better than what we are doing. We need to talk to our army. Look at Boko Haram attacking Nigerian barracks. It's negative media. The US government are here. They know what's going on in Nigeria. People are killed across Nigeria. No arrests, no prosecutions. They are here. They know what's going on. So let's not do lip service. Let's find solutions to bring our young people probably into sports. Sport is an avenue, a sector that can encourage unemployed youths to have a skill for tomorrow. Play football, play basketball, keep trying, keep yourself motivated. But if there's nothing, no sport, nothing on the table, life of crime, it's nasty.
Well, you just heard it yourself. The Minister for Youth and Sports definitely has work on his hands. And of course, branding is certainly one of the things that must be looked into. Vince Equally, thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. He's a security consultant and a former British police officer. Sunrise Daily continues now with the team in Lagos, Chamberlain.